In this episode of Training and Tangents, we are going to be answering some of the questions that you guys have put to us. So if you do have any questions in future or anything that you want us to discuss and talk about, please comment on this post or just drop us a message and ask your questions and we'll happily go through them. We'll be doing more episodes like this. And we're going to finish today's episode with how me and Ben met. And I've actually got a funny story that Ben hasn't heard this actually. Obviously,
Oh,
Ben knows how we met, but I've got a little twist that I'm going to throw in as well, which I can see has just made him a little bit curious.
welcome to the Training Tangents podcast. My name is Ben, and that is the very springy Tom, my co-host. And the springy thing will make sense if you've seen, well, at this point, the post that we're going to try and do. We're going to try and challenge each other to random tasks, and Tom's a very springy boy. So, Tom, how's your week been? Have you been this? I did hear you've got a little spritz of the cold. Have you?
Oh, again, I know. I can't remember the last time I've been this ill, and I think I'm not too bad. It just feels like the back end of a little bit of a cold now. But yeah, I think I sort of ramped my training up relatively quickly in January, as we all do,
Hmm.
which would have been fine because my boys were sleeping. But then we've had last 2 weeks not quite so good, and I think just the level that I was asking of myself was just that little bit too much than what I could probably recover from, given the amount of sleep that I was getting. Which, funnily enough, will tie into one or two of the questions that we're gonna be answering today. So yeah, little bit under the weather, but not too bad. I've maintained most of my training, just taken out the hard CV stuff, which is the stuff that I find generally kicks my ass the most when, like, from an immune system perspective, and I find hardest to recover from. And the other thing was, obviously this is going to be a couple of weeks ago when people listen to this, but I've just done my most recent client training day, which was a really good day actually. We had 15 people there, and it's a combination of a sort of movement or skill breakdown. And on this day, we actually focused on lower back pain and how to kind of go through a rehab process from an injury perspective. It was focused on lower back, but the process is much the same whether it's like no matter what injury it is. So we did that, did some lifting, did some jumping, had some cake, and then we got a nice pump on and did a little bit of a conditioning block to finish, which everyone enjoyed in
Loved.
inverted
Yeah.
inverted commas. And then we went for pizza. It was a good day. What's
Good.
new with
As you
you
bet.
this week, mate?
I mean, you were saying obviously earlier, your back has been like the worst it's been in a while. Is it feeling a little bit better recently?
Oh, it's for the most part now. It's fine. I'm a little bit mindful when I'm going through certain movements, and a big part of that I think is knowing what I used to lift on certain movements and just taking a little bit of a step back, because I probably have lost a little bit of tolerance in certain positions compared to where I used to be, having had that injury. So I just need to kind of check myself a little bit and make sure I'm progressing sensibly to rebuild that capacity, to rebuild that tolerance, and get back to doing everything that I was doing. But it's 99% fine now. I just have to be mindful of that 1% of certain positions, certain movements, certain loading, particularly if I have a crap night's sleep.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I can share that as well. I recently have been getting back into pressing properly again, both overhead and bench press, and I got a nice overhead record. Again, not what I used to be able to lift, but I'm getting back up there faster than I expected, which is really nice. And that's obviously something we've talked about in the past, that any strength you've had in the past does return at an extremely quick rate if you are consistent and you're not jumping too far ahead, Tom.
Yeah. If you're not re-injuring yourself, basically.
Yeah, 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 pretty much. So I was able to I got a new overhead press record, which felt great. I was able to press properly without any injuries or without any like niggling pain in my shoulder. And then
Nice.
yesterday, do you ever get it where you go to like the workup sets? Now we'll talk about this in one of the questions later on, but like as you're warming up to the weight that you're supposed to be using, like the warm up weights just feel like someone's put gravity on hard mode. Like
Yeah.
I was pressing, and I was like, this is only now again only 80 kilos on a bench press. Like it's still a lot of weight, but for me, it shouldn't be a lot of weight for me at this point. And I was pressing. I was like, I could have sworn I put like 90 kilos on this thing. I looked on. I was like, that's 80. Oh no. And I was supposed to go up to 105 for 5 plus. I just was terrified. I literally was just sitting there, and I was like, if I die, I actually moved everything in the gym so I could bail out as well. So I moved the assault bike, I moved the dumbbells, so that if I did have to do the weight plate bail off thing, I would be able to do it without it breaking everything around me. And I was able to actually do it. So yeah, that was nice. It was nice doubting myself, but also being like, yeah, but just do it anyway. Just try it because you should be able to do it. You've had good sleep, you've had good food. You're just being a wimp, really, and that's what happens sometimes.
Yeah.
Luckily, I was able to overcome that whimpery.
It's
And then
it's funny,
yeah,
isn't it? Because sometimes the warm up sets feel rubbish, but then the working sets feel fine. Sometimes
yeah,
you get the opposite. The warm up sets feel great, and then you get to your working set and it's just not moving. And yeah, there often isn't any rhyme or reason to that. Is there? It's just yeah. Some
no.
days it is just a bit harder.
Yeah, and I mean that's something I say all the time to people as well. Is like performance is such a skittery little thing to grab hold of. If you're just
Yeah,
a normal person, if you've got a normal life, if you're not a professional athlete, if you're not a professional bodybuilder, performance is a slippery son of a bitch. Like to get because there's so many things that can have an impact on it. So yeah, that was good for me. I felt good to just be able to press again properly. A lot of my rowing motions now don't hurt, which is great. And then today, I took the new medication for my CF, which we were talking about just before we went on. I wheezed a little bit there, but I'm curious to see how this one affects me. So fingers crossed, it has all the positives that I got from the previous medication, but none of the negatives. So we will see, though. I'm going
yeah,
to be keeping a close eye on that for the next month. So they give me a month's basically supply of that. If it goes well, I just get some more. But yeah, that's how my
nice,
week has been so far in terms of training and other things. So should we
nice.
get into some of these questions that people have very kindly asked us? Should we pick
Yes, I
up
think we should.
one? Um,
So for question number one,
mhm.
Ben, you answer this first. What was one major turning point in your own fitness journey?
Um, so obviously getting Ollie, our dog, who's literally right here. He's sleeping on his little buffet. He was one of the biggest turning points where I realized I couldn't spend hours and hours in the gym. So I really looked at how to optimize my time, which meant cutting out a lot of exercises that I didn't actually need to be doing. I think we have this idea that output is like the best thing for us when it comes to training, and people always think more is better when it's not, and that's one of the big things that taught me that. And then the other bigger aspect, because I know you're going to talk about the boys coming along and you can talk about more in that detail, so I'll kind of set that one aside. The other one was bodybuilding, leaving bodybuilding as a, I don't know even know how you would phrase it, but like my main purpose of training was bodybuilding in a sense that I actually did get on stage and I did compete. Um, yeah, I think leaving that was one of the bigger decisions because I think when you are doing that type of task and you're trying to work towards a goal, when you achieve it or when you do step on stage or do the competition or do the race or whatever it is, it's after that that is the hardest part. That big crescendo. It's like this big thing you're leading up to, and then you're like, whoa, what do I do after this? So I think that was one of the biggest things for me about how my training changed because I no longer had to train in a way that was essentially bodybuilding is to appease other people because you're going up there to be judged by these people, and I didn't really like the idea that, well, first of all, doing against people who were not on the same level as me in terms of they were taking performance enhancing drugs, and that's a line I've never crossed and don't really have any interest in. The disparity between what I could achieve and what they could achieve was it was pointless. It was like running against someone who's on a moped or on a bicycle. It's just
Yeah.
not fair. So I thought, right, well, that does not serve me in any way. And then making training fun again. I think I force myself because bodybuilders, you have to go in and you have to grind and all the thing, all that like the people that you're surrounding yourself around in the bodybuilding community, the social media absorb. It's all about like the grind. It's so hard and you've got to push yourself and all this. It works. Like don't get me wrong, but I just kind of got a bit fed up with it, and I was like, what do I actually enjoy, and why am I actually doing this? Because I'm not doing it to win some trophy. I'm not doing this to make someone else give me the thumbs up. Be like, yeah, good job. I want to do it because I need to. I
Yep.
kind of always want to be able to do this, so it was about trying to find what I got my enjoyment out of again. And I think that was probably the biggest turning point. It was find the fun in what I'm doing, and if I'm not having fun, re-look at what I'm doing to find that fun again. So I think that was probably the greatest turning point in my career in terms of
Yeah.
what about you?
Yeah, it's so hard when, like you say, you've been gearing everything towards this goal, and that's what's given your training its purpose, and then suddenly that thing isn't there anymore. It's like obviously like slightly different, but athletes that compete at the Olympics, they spent 4 years committed and dedicated to doing this thing,
Not
and then
exactly
after
same
the
as an Olympic
Olympics,
athlete, Tom.
yeah,
Bodybuilding's exactly the same.
exactly the same.
Exactly the same.
Um, but yeah, you can just imagine this thing that was huge in your life as now just is in the past. It does leave you feeling a bit like, okay, what direction am I going now?
Yep.
And probably one of my well, the two biggest turning points that I can think of, like you mentioned, firstly when the boys came along, because the time that I had to train reduced, but also it was less of a priority, and I enjoy training for the most part, but I also I don't want to spend all of my time training because there's other things that I also want to be doing and need to be doing, like spending time with my family. And yeah, just getting your head around that sort of switch of how do I make the most of this with less time so it doesn't feel like it doesn't have any purpose, or it's I'm just kind of
Spinning wheels.
just yeah spinning your wheels and not really getting anywhere. So there was that as a transition, but probably the biggest one, similar to you, is when I stopped playing rugby, which also coincided with a knee surgery that I had. And there was lots going on in my life at that point. I recently started PTing. I was living in Newport, I was working in Bristol, and I was playing rugby in Gloucester. So I was training there twice a week, and the I was playing rugby league in the national two, so it's a national league. So basically, whole weekend was out. Evenings twice a week were completely out, and I was just kind of finding my feet with coaching and personal training. So yeah,
Eating things.
there was a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was juggling a few plates. So it was stepping away from rugby was both really hard, but also at the time a little bit of a relief because I got this knee injury. It was I tore my meniscus. I had an operation, and the recovery wasn't too bad after that. It was just that they trimmed some of it, so you can pretty much get back to doing what you were doing previously relatively quickly. But at that point, obviously I got this injury, and I'd also just stepped away from playing. So my training, yeah, I didn't really know where to go with it. And to start off with, I just tried to carry on doing most of the stuff that I had been doing. But very quickly, I got quite bored of that because, like you said, there was no real goal. I didn't really have a purpose other than generally enjoying training a bit. But very quickly, it became a bit boring, and I was looking for something new. And that was where I first started doing calisthenics and bodyweight training because it was a new goal to work towards. It wasn't dependent on my knee being in particularly good working order, so I could kind of push quite hard and work quite hard towards this thing that at the time felt very fun. So that was one of probably my biggest kind of pivots and turning points when it comes to training. But I know in the next two episodes we're going to be talking a little bit about our backgrounds and sort of our sort of full training journeys, and giving people a little bit of an insight as to what's going on there. So I won't say any more right now because I know we're going to be going into that another time. But yeah, those were two of the points that I probably found it hardest to adjust what I was doing just because of those circumstances changing.
And that it's so important to recognize the fact that there's going to be I mean, we had to pinpoint just two, but I can probably think of a lot more than two, and I'm sure you
Yeah.
can too. They may not be as big; they're just the two that we can think of quite, off the top of our heads. But I think one of the most important traits, I guess, to being successful in this long term when it comes to your physical health and your prioritization of health and fitness. Because look, at the end of the day, this is never going to be the number one priority for us. It has to be as high up in that priority list as we can possibly get it. Other things will come along and kind of put themselves in a much higher position: family, friends, job, all those things. But I think one of the most important things you need to be able to do is be able to look at the situation and problem solve it. Really, it's like, okay, the problem is I can't do what I used to do. I can't maybe do it for as long as I'd like to do. So what can I do? How do I solve this problem? How do I, navigate around this? And it's not always going to be the most optimal way. And I think a lot of people struggle with that. There's like, oh, this isn't the best way of doing things. I'm like, yeah, but it's doing something rather than doing nothing.
Yeah.
And I think you have to be able to adapt. The best people who, do stick to this are the people who can adapt to things and change alongside it rather than getting up to a wall or perceived wall and then be like, well, guess I'm never going back to the gym again. Like that just doesn't work.
Yeah.
So finding
Yeah.
is key, and you're gonna encounter a lot of those in your life. So being able to navigate your way around them is key, I think.
Yeah, and I think another good question to ask yourself is what would make this fun again?
Hmm.
And obviously, you might not come to that answer straight away, but you probably will find that there's maybe elements that are missing within your training. When I started doing bodyweight training, I was really missing having a goal specifically to work towards, but also learning a new skill. And
Hmm.
I know not everyone does training to be able to learn new skills, but I think from a longevity perspective, exposing yourself to learning to move in different ways, learning to do different modalities is a really good way to actually keep the enjoyment for the long term.
I
So
agree.
asking yourself that question, like what would make this fun again? And sometimes it might be doing something with other people. It might be finding something that allows you to be a bit competitive, and that might be, I don't know, going to a CrossFit class or
Flag
s-
football.
yeah,
Literally, yeah.
anything like, yeah, a recreational sport, or and like there's so many options. But I think just asking yourself that question and then just kind of thinking over what it is you feel like you're missing or what would make it enjoyable for you again. That yeah, that for me is a really really good question to ask yourself.
Yeah. Another very simple thing just to tack onto that is one of the easiest things you can do is have someone else involved in it, which kind of takes away the level of motivation you need to have. Because if someone else is turning up for it and you're kind of a key part of that, like being part of a team, perfect example, or like playing someone in like squash or something like that, if you can commit to something that is maybe new and someone else is also committed to, the chances of you sticking to it become much higher. And we've said this in the past, but I think there's nothing. I think everybody is doing themselves a disservice if they've never been part of a team before, like a sports team
Yeah,
or some form of team. It is genuinely one of the greatest like things you can do. I think being part of a team. It's something that
yeah,
I miss a
absolutely.
lot. I think from team sports, you just miss that the camaraderie and just yeah, being part of a sports team or just a team in general, being a sum of the part rather than like being what we're used to, which is just that the only part. It's like, well,
Yeah.
if the only part doesn't show up today, then nothing happens that well. Whereas the team doesn't work. But yeah, I think like I said, we could probably talk about this a lot more, but we're going to
Yeah,
be talking about it in a little bit more depth in the next episode. So, on
yeah.
to question number two. What did we get asked?
Ben, just before we do question number two, I don't mean to alarm you, and this might have been the case the whole time, but your sword in the background is glowing blue, so there might be orcs around.
Oh well, it's probably Ollie. It's probably Ollie.
Oh,
Yeah, it's
for
definitely
anyone who's listening to this rather than watching it, Ben has got a
Sting.
sting blade from
Sting
Lord of the
you again?
Rings. Of course I did.
I'm surprised.
And the sting
Yeah,
blade glows blue when goblins or orcs are nearby, and it's been
it's no
glowing, which has kind
guy.
of been putting me off a little bit.
it will die soon. I'll need to charge it, but yeah. Nice tangent.
Right. Without further ado,
Mhm.
question number two: how do you avoid overtraining whilst balancing doing enough to make improvements? Do you want to start with this one, Ben?
Yes,
I think we're going
so
to
I
have quite
believe,
different answers to this, so I'll be interested to hear what you've got to say.
yeah, I'm going to come at this from the perspective of the kind of everyday person, and the likelihood of you overtraining is unlikely for the average person. I think the more likely thing, now you can, it's a bit pernickety, but you're more likely to be under recovering than overtraining. Vast majority of people, your output is probably going to be something that to overtrain, you need to be really, really pushing it. And I mean, like, pushing it to a level that someone who is very athletic could push it to. I think, a lot of people, we talk about perceived effort. So, 1 to 10. One being this, like right now, Tom and I just chatting to each other. That'd be considered a one in terms of the effort level. 10 is beyond what you probably have experienced in all likelihood. 10 is the max level of your capacity. 10 is probably the amount of energy you would expend if someone was genuinely trying to kill you, like it's chasing you down. That's 10. People think, oh, I've been to 10. You probably haven't. I've tried to push myself to a 10, and even then, my brain was probably telling me to stop at probably around 9. In fact, I did not a great example of being smart here, but during my fitness instructor or personal trainer course, I had a chest infection, and the guy who was running the course was an ex-boxer, and he thought, oh, it'd be great to get the entire class to do the Welsh boxing fitness test. And basically it was like a circuit, and then the more circuits you lasted, the higher you qualified. And I think at the time it was like 5 rounds. So if you got to the 5 rounds, like you were crushing it. I had a chest infection, so again, not the most wise of me to do this, but I am competitive, and I saw that a lot of people were kind of dropping off, and I was like, I can keep going. Yeah, this will be fine. And I think I got to like the 4th round, so I got like high up. I think he said I would have potentially qualified, but low level qualification. So I was like, cool. Tom, I literally could not stop sweating for about 45 minutes after that. Even after my shower, I felt sick. Like I just felt awful. And that's as close, and I still wouldn't even say I was at 10. So the likelihood of you being able to push yourself that high is unlikely. However, the likelihood of you not getting enough sleep, likely. Not drinking enough water, more likely. Not getting enough food or the right quantity of food or the right quantity of a certain type of food, very likely. Stress in your life adding up, quite likely. So I think a lot of the times people are, in all likelihood, not recovering and not taking their training or their recovery as seriously as they take their training. So in terms of how I would deal with that, the everyday person, I would say start looking at your recovery just as seriously as you look at your training. Like everyone takes training fairly seriously, but then recovery is kind of an afterthought. And the analogy I always use is like you're in a boat. One side you've got your output, which is your training. The other side you've got your recovery. They need to be even, otherwise you're just going to go around in circles. So I would say look at sleep first and foremost. I'll keep this really simple, and then you can go into the because there's a specific person that's asked this question. You have them in mind, but I would say lowest hanging fruit, sleep. We spend what a third of our lives sleeping. So if you look at a pie chart in terms of 24 hours, you that's the biggest part of the pie chart. So I would look at your sleep, seeing how you can improve it, looking at your bedtime routine. There's a really good 3-2-1 method that I use. So 3 hours before you go to bed, try to avoid eating anything. 2 hours before you go to bed, try to reduce the amount of water you intake. And then number one, about an hour before you go to bed, try to avoid any screens or any bright lights or anything like that. Just to let your brain get into that pattern. Now, again, don't need to stick to that precisely as 3-2-1. Use it as a principle, but I think that's a great way of kind of getting yourself into a good routine with your sleep. Again, it's the biggest part of that puzzle. Treat that first. Try to really work on that before you move on to anything else. But yeah, that's how I would. That's kind of my answer to that question. But I know you have a more specific answer to this one due to the person who asked it. So
Yeah, so The woman who asked this, Becky, she is an ex-gymnast. She's got an excellent level of strength. She's got an excellent level of fitness. So she's got a really high level across multiple different modalities. And that's where I think that your answer, Ben, if you're talking sort of purely from a bodybuilding perspective, I would be inclined to agree with you. I think bodybuilding, yes, it can be stressful on your body, but unless you're doing a ridiculous volume, it's generally, compared to some other modalities of training, will probably be a little bit less stressful for your body. Whereas if you're looking at balancing a combination of power, strength, hypertrophy, and cardiovascular fitness, and also potentially doing some kind of sport, I think there's very much a training load related answer to this question. And not to say that you shouldn't focus on optimizing your sleep and your nutrition, in particular getting enough protein and enough carbs. For the most part, I think as a general rule, if people have gone through some kind of fat loss phase or are relatively lean, a lot of people do tend to under consume carbs, which will have a detrimental impact on your training. But when you're trying to balance multiple different modalities and like progress lots of them, if you're at a low level, you're going to be able to do that. But as you get to a higher level in certain aspects of training, you need to put more time and effort into it to get better at it. So, for example, if you're already a high level strength and like a really high level, you've got a high level of strength and you're a high level runner, it's going to be quite hard for you to balance doing both of those pushing both those things at the same time, because the intensity and the volume that you're going to need to do on both of those things is probably going to mean that you're going to end up pushing one or the other a little bit too hard, and then having a detrimental impact on either one or both of those things. So what I normally look at is the amount of training that you need to do to progress a certain quality is far greater than what you need to actually maintain that quality. Maintenance is a far lower bar. And once you get to the point where lots of things are a relatively high level, you're going to be much better off polarizing your training to keep the qualities you want to maintain at a low level, so that you've got more time and energy and effort that you can put into the things that you want to progress.
Yeah. So
Because
basically being more
train,
directional. Basically being more
but
directional. Like if you want to get stronger, focus on strength. Basically not worrying too much about the drop off of your cardiovascular, because the cardiovascular won't take as much to maintain. That's the thing. That's
yeah,
one of the big things that people don't really get, is that they think they need to continually push and push and push to hold on to the tissue they've got, which isn't not true at all. Like the the effort it took for you to achieve that muscle tissue is not the same level of intensity you need to do just to hold on to it. I think that's a big one. So you're just basically saying,
yeah.
if you're focusing, just try to be singular in your purpose without, without the stress of thinking, oh, this is going to drop off if I do this. Is that kind of the
Yeah, basically, and but you can't, like, it doesn't necessarily, like, it won't necessarily drop off. Like if you're doing that maintenance level, which is going to be a low level, you can keep it at a high level, like at the current high level or just under, because it might taper off a tiny bit whilst you're focusing on something else. But yeah, being a bit smarter about how you're prioritizing your training, I think is definitely a good thing to do. And then if you kind of break that down and look at your sort of week to week, how you kind of put that together, there's a few different ways you can go about doing that. And it's obviously gonna depend massively on what's actually realistic for you to do as a person, and how you're going to sort of balance and juggle that. And I think a lot of people don't necessarily give that the enough kind of put enough emphasis on that, because at the end of the day, if you've got the optimal training program but you hate doing it, you're just not going to do it. But if you look at sort of like, if we look at training and sort of different ways that you're going to fatigue, you've got neuromuscular fatigue. So anything that's high power or high strength is gonna stimulate you neuromuscularly. That is gonna take probably 48 hours to recover from. So if you're having high intensity bouts, probably doing them back to back, day to day, is going to be harder to recover from. There's also sort of structural, so muscle damage. If you do sort of a lot of volume on something, you're going to be sore from that. That is going to impact your performance on the subsequent days. You've also got substrate, so glycogen. Like if you've done a long run, your glycogen stores are probably going to be a little bit lower going into the next session. So having a high volume day the day after you've done a long CV bout is probably going to be a little bit harder. Not to say you can't, but might be a little bit harder. And then also just like mentally, are you in a place to kind of push hard? Because there's some sessions that are going to be harder to go and do, and obviously depends on the person. Like doing hard in like running intervals or bike intervals, to get the most out of that, you are going to have to knuckle down and get your head into it. And if you're doing that on a day where you're feeling a bit tired, or it's towards the end of the week, or you've had a busy week of work, that's going to be harder to do. So taking those things into account and looking at how you're setting up your week can have a big impact on that. And one of the ways that a lot of kind of hybrid athletes tend to do this is start of the week, higher intensity, lower volume; end of the week, higher volume, lower intensity, both from a resistance perspective, but also from an aerobic perspective, and that can be quite a nice way to balance things out. And then another option that a lot of people who do participate recreationally in some kind of sport or play sports is having like alternating high and low intensity days. So your high intensity days might be like sprints, power work, strength work, that sort of thing. And your low intensity days might be some easy CV, maybe some upper body accessory stuff, a little bit of pump stuff, maybe, and just anything additional that you want to put in there, or more kind of technique based sports practice, if you like. And those are two methods, depending on the goal, that can be really nice to play around with.
I've heard people, and this is something I've done in the past, some of the guys who I've worked with, where the hard days are necessary, obviously, and it's a case of like, okay, in like a week, for example, there'll be a hard session, which is the session that is, as you were saying, hard for you to be like, okay, I have to really show up for this mentally and physically, which is tough. So that'll be the hard session. Then you've got the kind of intermediate session that you can show up to. It's you know that there's a good level of work involved in it, but you're like, once I start warming up, I'll be fine. And then you've got like the lowest level entry. And
Yeah,
in a month, let's just say, like, we know you need to get 4 of the high intensity, 2 of the medium, and then 2 of the low. It's about like using that kind of template that's I've used before. It's like, okay, we're trying to get 4 by the end of the month. It doesn't matter when you do them, as long as you get them done, and as long as there's a day, a day of recovery between, or preferably 2 days of recovery between the 2 hard ones. Drop them in whenever you're feeling ready. But what I'd suggest is don't just go, I'll do this on this day. It's plan it.
yeah,
If you're not feeling it, then have the backup option of the easy or the low, but plan them in and then just adjust them as you need to make it a little bit more free flowing for you, especially if you're not like,
yeah,
you're not getting paid for this. It's just something you want to do for
yeah,
fun.
exactly.
That's
And
maybe
just on top of that, mate, I find personally that throughout a week, there's times when I feel more motivated to train. I feel a bit better rested. I feel a bit more energized, and there's times when I don't. So put putting those harder sessions in on the days that generally you're feeling good to go
yeah.
is going to be a better way to do it, and something that I quite often tell people. Like, it's slightly aside from this, but trying to get a full body session in at the start of the week, because if you do that, you've already set yourself up well for the rest of the week. Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for actually that like logistics of actually putting it into your diary, but also you're knowing what your mental state is likely to be for those sessions.
Yeah, again, as a tangent, that's something I try to get my clients to do, is instead of saying like, "Oh, I'm going to train," the way I coach, it's not like do as I say and that's it. Like, I'll write the program, and be like, "Look, it's free flowing. As long as we get this done in the week, it's fine. Obviously, this is the preference of the order I want you to do it, and blah blah blah." But a lot of times, whenever I'll ask clients like, "Okay, when are you planning on training next?" They'll be like, "Saturday." I'm like, "What time?" Give
Yeah,
me a time. Like, give me an actual time that you're going to train, because your brain will then log that like it's a dentist appointment, doctor's appointment. Like, your brain likes those specifics. And I was like, right, at what time are you going to train on Saturday? 10. Okay, well, what happens if you wake up late? What's the backup option? Oh, well, maybe train in the afternoon after I've had my lunch. Cool. What's the backup plan after that? Sunday? Cool. At what time? The more specific you get with something, the more likely you are to stick to it. But always have a backup plan. And then if you need it, and people know themselves whether they need that tertiary plan of like, okay, well, what if that happens if the backup plan doesn't work?
Yeah.
Get specific with it. The chances of you being of actually making that session jumps up dramatically when you put a date on it. I think there was like a study done about that where they got people to commit to training 3 days a week, and the people who wrote down and like treated it like a date in their diary, their adherence to it jumped up by a staggering percentage. I don't know the exact stats on it, but it was insane when people just actually put the time and effort into organizing it, planning into their week. Adherence shot up.
Yeah.
So, question number 3. Do you
Nice.
think we covered that?
I think we've got that, and I think we've answered a bit of question number 3 anyway. So this question was from Becky as well, and it was how to fuel for high intensity training slash high training load and recovery. So I've only really got one additional point to kind of make on this, I think, and that would be to say, obviously in our nutrition episode we spoke about the most important things from a nutrition perspective. When you're training a lot and you have a high training load, that is when nutrient timing becomes a lot more important, specifically carb timing. So if you're training multiple days back to back or multiple times in a day, you want to do everything you can to make sure you're recovering between those sessions. So there may be an element of sort of managing the, well, there is an element of managing the training load. If you know you're training twice in a day, you might do a little bit less in each of those sessions, for example. But the biggest thing that's going to have an impact here is going to be managing your carbs around that. So it becomes way more important to get some easily absorbed carbs in straight after you've trained in the morning, if you know you're training again later in the evening, just so you're going to be recovering as well as possible for that second bout. And also if you are doing multiple day-to-day training sessions, again that's where the nutrition side of things becomes really really important. Because say you're doing a long run on a weekend day, but you know you're going to want to train on like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, etc., making sure you're getting in some carbs either during or straight after that bout, not just because it's going to impact that specific session, but it's going to have a knock-on effect on the sessions later on in the week. So yeah, that is definitely sort of looking at managing your training load and make sure you're not putting yourself in an absolute hole in those sessions if you are training more frequently, but also making sure you're getting enough carbs in between them as well is going to give you the best chance to make the most of those sessions and recover well in between. Do you have anything that you'd kind of add to that?
No, I mean, I think you nailed it perfectly there. I mean, if you're looking for performance, you need to fuel. It's literally
Yeah.
as simple as that. You cannot expect an optimal performance if you're not giving yourself the fuel to output that optimal performance. And carbohydrates, like they are seen as the bad guys for a lot of things. They are your best friend when it comes to performance. Like it's literally their pretty much one of their sole purposes in the body is fuel tank to your machine that is your body. And if you're not getting enough of that and you're not treating it properly, like I remember the whole thing about breakfast being the most important meal of the day. That was actually
Yeah.
created by the guy who owns Kellogg's, so good for him. But I always say to people, like, once you get to this level of training, the most important meals of the day are pre-workout and post-workout. If you're
Yeah.
looking to really optimize your performance and to really take this thing seriously, but there's a couple of stages you need to get to before you really start worrying about that. But if you are at that point, then yeah,
Yeah.
pre-workout, post-workout, what you've got in your system ready to operate, and then what you're doing to replenish all those things that you've depleted, pretty damn important. Uh,
Yeah.
I don't really have much else to add. So
Just
I
just one caveat to that.
go
I
for it.
think if you get into that mentality of like you have to fuel it, and everything has to be optimal, sometimes you kind of you forget how adaptable your body is. So if on one or two occasions you don't do that well, it's not going to make that much difference. It's when you're doing that chronically, or that's how you set up your training, your nutrition all the time. That's where you're going to have issues. But if for example, it's like people say don't run before you're lifting weights because it's going to impact how much you lift in the gym. Yes, it is, but if you do it once or twice, it's not going to make any difference at all. It's
Exactly.
if you're consistently setting yourself up in that way, that's where you may run into problems, or you might go into those sessions and not be able to kind of push as hard as what you would like.
No, I agree. I agree. It's like when someone has a session, they're like, "Oh, I can only do a session again the next day." And I'm like, "Look, it's fine, but
Yeah,
ideally, you would want a little bit of time to recover, but just don't go in expecting your performance to be, anything amazing. Probably lower your expectations when it comes to that. But yeah, you're right. If you're doing it consistently, again, that's what the body. Hopefully, that's something you're picking up from this podcast is that what we do in the odd occasion, our body doesn't really register. It doesn't. It's
yeah,
just like, cool. It's what we're doing consistently and repeatedly that it's going to then start to learn from.
100%.
Okay, so we've got our
Question number 4.
tangent. Oh, I'm
Oh,
going to go
would
with
you
the would you
rather?
rather. Okay,
Oh,
so all right, would you? I'm trying to find the good. There's here. Okay, would you? This is a really random one. Would you rather have a pocket-sized elephant as a sidekick, or
yes.
a miniature giraffe? So a miniature giraffe. So a pocket-sized elephant. So you're talking like the size of like a Coke can, like a small Coke can. I would assume that kind of fits in your. That's like a pocket-sized thing,
Yeah.
or a miniature giraffe.
How heavy is it? Does it retain all of its weight,
It's
so it just
mass
becomes
from my
really
mind.
dense?
Super like no, I would say it weighs the equivalent of what you think it would. So
Okay.
what it'd be like? Yeah, damn.
I think I go for an elephant, but I don't really have a strong reason for why.
No, me either. I just think it'd be hilarious to take you know what? It'd just be great for just not people not knowing what you're doing and just be like, oh, hold on, and they're just setting like a small toy-sized elephant on the table and then just continuing the conversation. I think that'd
Yeah.
be amazing. Plus,
Also,
elephants.
it'd be quite cool if you trained it to be able to squirt people on command. So you give
Oh,
it like a
yes.
bowl of water, and yeah, just get it spray. Get it.
Treat it like teach you like a Pokemon. I
Yeah.
totally called Squirtle as well. Yeah, I mean the a miniature giraffe, like in my head, a miniature is not a miniature as in like a tiny, but I'm thinking just like a shrunk down, like a pygmy giraffe, and I can't really see
Like a
a dog.
dog-sized giraffe.
Yeah, like a dog size. Yeah, like a Great Dane, but stretched out.
Mm.
I mean, I'm going with the
It would be.
pocket-sized elephant every time, just for the comedic factor and the fact that they are super intelligent, super emotional.
Yeah.
Like, I learned it's pretty interesting actually the other day. So I was watching this video. Here's the random tangent. Um, there was these researchers that basically replicated. So elephants actually give themselves names, so they actually can make noises, and that's the noise or the name of an elephant, right?
That's
So
very
these
cool.
researchers went out and they recorded these elephants making these noises, but they replayed a noise. This goes from like wholesome to pretty heartbreaking pretty quickly. They played a noise of one of the females of the pack. No, it's not a pack. Herd
Yeah.
of elephants that had died. So the daughter of this female elephant that died heard her voice, like heard her name, and was searching in the bushes for like 2 or 3 days. Because imagine having the intelligence, imagine hearing someone that you
Yeah.
know is dead and their voice like out there and being like, the what like where did that just come from? So this elephant poor thing was searching around the bushes trying to find this
That's
dead elephant because they
that's
heard
so
his voice.
savage.
Isn't it? So I was just like, first of all,
Yeah.
it's amazing the elephants have names for each other, but then I was like, oh, that's really sad. So there you go. There's a nice bummer
Yeah.
for you. Anyway,
Yeah. Okay.
question number
Moving
four.
swiftly on before we start to cry. Question number 4. How important is a cool down and a warm up, and what is an example of one? Do you wanna start with this one, Ben?
Yes. As you get older, both are way, way more important. This is all the way away. It's not a ghost. It's all the way away. Yeah,
The
warming
Hawks
up
are
and cooling
coming.
down. Admittedly, not something that we probably did as much of when we were younger because our bodies were just a little bit better built for it. But something that I recommend massively. I keep it nice and simple with warm ups. I have a generic warm up, and then if I've got something that's like stiff or achy, then I'll spend a bit more time. But my general warm up routine is warm up the ball and socket joints, so the shoulders and the hips, with the old school arm swings. Literally, the Bart Simpson. Like if you get too close, you're going to get hit, and it's not my fault. Forward arm swings, back arm swings. I do across the body with the shoulders again, just trying to mobilize and start getting my body ready. The purpose of a warm up is to prepare your body for movement. That includes elevating the body temperature because our blood, typically, if we're not at movement, is going to be in our trunk where it's used for digestion and all the processes the blood is needed for. But as soon as we start training and being active, it starts to direct to the peripherals, so our arms and our legs. So we want to make sure that we're doing that. If it's cold, for example, at the time of this recording, it's January, dated it there, it will be February when it comes out. It's cold, it's the UK. Highly recommend wearing warm clothes. Get a hoodie, get sweats on, keep yourself warm. The purpose is to get warm, it's not to fatigue yourself. So a couple arm swings, a couple leg swings. I usually like to kind of activate my glutes, which I literally just stand and contract my glutes as hard as I can for 15 seconds. Relax. I'll do it like sit into a deep squat if I need to mobilize my back. And then, to be honest, a lot of my warm ups are just using the exercise I'm about to do at a lighter load. So, for example, when I'm bench pressing, I I can give you my exact bench press warm up. So I did the arm stretch. I use the bands. I usually warm up my triceps with the bands as well because elbows are usually an issue point for a lot of people. They are for me, so I'll just do some like banded extensions, just nice and quick. Nothing. I don't count it. I literally just do it until my arms feel like they're starting to warm up a little bit. And then my bench press, I will do again because I'm going heavier with this. I'm doing 5-3-1, which is a strength training protocol. I'll do 5 reps at. In fact, I can tell you exactly what it was. I did 5 reps at 50 kilos, so that's about 40% of my 1 rep max. Don't need to worry too much. I then did 5 at 62. I did 3 reps at 75, and then I got into my working set, which my first set was five reps with 80. So again, I usually just use the exercise that I'm going to be doing to warm myself up, unless there's something very specific that I'm feeling like is quite tight. Other than that, for my shoulder, I like to try and get my arm like right across my body, so I use a band to assist that to get my arm right the way across the body, get that nice thoracic opening up, and then similarly, I try and like get my arm as far behind my back using that band as well, because that's a range of movement that I lost for so long, and now I'm making sure it doesn't leave me ever again. What about you for warming up? Fairly similar, or do you have like a set routine you follow?
I don't have a set routine. I quite like to use the warm up to add a little bit of variation a lot of the time. Um,
Mhm.
I completely agree with you in terms of like warm ups are very important, but the goal should be to get to your working sets as quick as possible. I fell into the trap before of making sort of my movement prep before doing any lifting sort of 20-25 minutes. And obviously if you've only got half an hour to train, you want to get to that working set as quickly as possible. So sometimes if I'm really short on time, that is, like you said, just doing your first lift and starting, say it's a deadlift or an RDL, do 20 reps with an empty barbell, add a little bit of load, do another set, add a little bit of load, do another set until you're feeling warm.
Mhm.
In terms of warming up for a specific lift, I tend to go for sort of 5 reps, about 60-ish% of what I'm gonna my top set, 3 reps 70 to 80, and then a single 90 to around about what that top set will be. If I'm already fairly warm going into the set, because I think again a lot of time like, it's good from a skill perspective, but also we want to get to the stimulating work as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
And then in terms of just a general warm up when I first get into the gym, I think a lot of people have moved away from this, but just doing 3 to 5 minutes of easy CV stuff to get your heart rate up, get some blood flowing, that sort of thing can be really, really beneficial. And if you were to look at the difference in terms of the range of motion that you can get from when you go in cold to just doing 5 minutes sat on a bike, it'd be amazing the difference that you'd get just from doing that. You don't need necessarily any kind of fancy stretching drills or anything like that. Just getting that blood flow will do loads for you. And then I quite often do a little bit of sort of deep plyo stuff, particularly building into if I'm doing some heavy, like some heavy lower body lifts. I find it's quite nice because it kind of primes you to get in towards some power stuff, warms up the joints nicely with like not very much load. So kind of oscillations or little jumps in sort of deep ranges of motion, I find like really nice. Like, yeah, nice,
Oscillation.
real
I like.
nice.
Oh, that's a great
But
word.
cool downs,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
personally,
Cool
I
downs. Cool downs. What do you
I
mean?
I never program cooldowns for myself or clients. I think
Yeah.
generally the only real benefit that I see from a cooldown is if you want to take yourself from a stress state where you're training into a bit more of a relaxed state and
Mhm.
be mindful about that process, doing some breathing or maybe some light stretching, you can go do that if you like to do that. But a lot of people think that cool downs will stop you from getting sore, stop you from getting stiff and help you recover quicker. Or if you're doing some stretching at the end of a session, it'll help you retain mobility. But actually, none of those things are true. If you've done something that is a stimulating amount of work in a session, you are going to get some stiffness and soreness from doing the training. And anything that generally offsets or blunts that that soreness is probably going to blunt the adaptation that you're trying to get from doing the training anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not really going to help from that perspective. It's not really going to help from like a recovery perspective as well, because for that same reason, and also similar to any other quality that you're working towards, like really low intensity stretching, it might feel quite nice. In which case, absolutely go ahead, but it's not really going to be stimulating or hard enough to actually make any meaningful changes to range of motion. So you're not actually going to like maintain any of that. Even if you stretch into a slightly deeper position, what you normally would, you're not going to maintain that going forward. So those are the main reasons that most people I find tend to do cool downs. But in my opinion, it's worth spending as much time possible doing the actual stimulating training, and
Yes.
then afterwards, if you are feeling stiff, do something that stimulates some light blood flow, like going for a walk, or if you want to have a sauna, or any of those things, but like at a later date.
I think, speaking to the people who are probably listening to this, in all likelihood, their training modality or their training approach is going to be that of a bodybuilder style approach, which is trying to build muscle tissue. Which, let's face it, you don't really need to lie down after that. Like you don't need
Yeah.
to recover. Once you finish your set, you go, oh, that sucked. Okay, good. Whereas if you're doing something like very high level of conditioning, so Tabata is the perfect example. If you're doing Tabata, which is, was it 10 seconds on, 20 seconds off, or is it 20 seconds on, 10 seconds
20
off?
20 on, 10 off.
Yeah, gross. It's disgusting.
Yeah.
You definitely probably need to consider having a cool down period associated with that. You don't want to do that and then immediately try and go off and do something else. There's a good chance that you're going to, again, assuming you're going to the correct intensity of Tabata, which should be balls to the wall, or the female equivalent of that, you should be exhausted. But let's face it, most people who are listening to this are probably just going in lifting some weights. You probably just don't
Yeah.
need to be wasting your time. Or if you're going, okay, I need 10 minutes to cool down, probably don't. You probably take that 10 minutes and put it into, as you said, the more stimulating, high yield.
Yeah.
So yeah, cool down's not something I don't think I've done a cool down, and I can't think of one. Yoga was the last time I did a cool down. I fell asleep, which was great.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. And
Um,
I just one more point on that. I think if it is range of motion or building mobility that you're after, you're much better off taking some of your working sets through a greater range of motion, because by loading through that range, you're going to build strength through a greater range, which means you're more likely to retain that range going forwards. So you're much better off loading through greater ranges when you're training, rather than trying to spend 10 minutes at the end of a session doing some half-hearted stretching.
okay, so I'm keen to know this. This is the last question. How did you and I meet? Now, you teased me at the start here with some previously unknown factors in this conversation, so I'm just going
Well,
to let you go for it. So, yeah.
no, I think you should answer first, and then I'll tag on after.
Okay, so we met through a mutual friend, Erin. aka Aaron, but he just insists that we call him Aaron because that's what his mum calls him. That's fair, I get it. Aaron,
It's the double A. It makes an air sound.
yeah, yeah. We met through him because he managed to basically pin us down over social media to play Dungeons and Dragons. And I believe you joined slightly later, didn't you? You were a couple of weeks after Josh and I joined. Or were you?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I was a little bit after. Waffles.
Got waffles.
Sorry.
Having a-
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's heard
Um,
something.
so yeah, we met through that. I think then we met. We obviously were pretending to be. I was pretending to be a dwarf. You were pretending to be a dark elf.
Yeah,
Fendi, as
yeah.
I call him. I played a paladin, dwarf paladin called Balon, who up until a couple of weeks ago was alive and thriving, and now he is dead, fighting demons somewhere, some in some hells. And yeah, we met through that, and then we went. We obviously had the D&D weekend, and we got to like train together, and that was a lot of
Yeah,
fun. We did that horrible. I
yeah,
mean, sorry, really pleasant conditioning where I
yeah, yeah.
really got thrown up.
I
It
still
was
need to post that video.
yes, you've got it now. So, I mean, luckily, I think there's another video of Mike coming out and just being like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "No, I will be." 'Cause the lesson is never eat watermelon just before you're going to do a disgusting, torturous session that Aaron has probably concocted because he's sick. So,
I think the lesson is just know that if you work that hard, you're going to feel pretty rubbish. I
would you
remember
agree?
after doing I did NFG, which is National Fitness Games, a couple of times, and it was after one of the events that I was just lying on the floor. I couldn't do anything, and there's another event in like 45 minutes. So I basically had Rev just like mush up a banana and kind of put it into my mouth because I couldn't. Yeah, I literally couldn't. I couldn't do anything.
Dude, I'm not joking. See, when we did that, it was the bike. It was the assault bike. It was the second time we did it. That was the one I was sick because we've done two of those things together.
Yeah,
Two horrible conditioning sessions at the D&D weekend. But the second time, I remember lying on the floor, and you guys were just talking, and I just hearing you talking was too much effort for me to contain. Like I was just like, I wish those guys would just like just shut up for like 5 minutes. My brain just trying to listen to you and to make sure I wasn't having to answer anything. That was too much energy for my body to give at that time. So I was like, I'm gonna have to leave and go outside. So yeah, that was fun. But anyway, so
yeah.
what was
Oh,
your
the little twist. So
twist? Yeah.
I think I actually heard Ben on a fitness podcast not long after I started PTing, and you were obviously talking about your cystic fibrosis and your journey with training, and at the time was what I just started coaching at David Lloyd's, and there was one of the members who was coming in. She had cystic fibrosis. She used to carry around her oxygen tank with her while she was going on the treadmill and just really like doing everything that she could to try and improve her lung function. And having met her first and then heard you on this podcast, I was like, wow, this guy has an unbelievable story, and I actually found it quite inspiring. And I've actually never told you that I kind of
Oh,
heard of you probably about 10 years before we actually ever met.
no way. That's like that is weird. That you know what? That's you and Di. So we played with another guy called Di, and I didn't know there was any relation between Di and Aaron. And I think it's when Di messaged me on Instagram. I had seen that he had sent me a message from like 3 or 4 years prior to that, and I was like, oh,
Wow.
he was talking about because he had long hair, and we were talking about. I think he told me to get an undercut at some point.
Yeah.
So that's weird. That is. So you knew who I was, but then apparently everyone knows who you are because there's that random dude who I think someone talked. You got like this weird legendary status. I call it the Chuck Norris effect, where someone
I don't think I
talked
know
about
this.
you. It's like someone was talking about you, and you went to Loughborough, didn't you? Was it
I
Loughborough?
did, yeah.
And someone said that they'd heard of this guy Tom who went to Loughborough, and they were like, "Yeah, he was like an absolute machine." And then it turns out Aaron was like the mutual friend of ours. He was like, "Are you talking about you talking about our Tom? Like, you, this Tom?" And then he showed a picture of him to this guy, and he was like, "That's him. That's him." So your fame and your athleticness is spread. So it's not just you, sir. That is pretty cool. Sorry, I mean,
But
they're all being on oxygen. That is, as I said, that's one of the things that I always struggled with in the sense of being, without any intention of this, being kind of like a face of cystic fibrosis, is that I've always worried that I don't paint an accurate representation. That's something I've always worried about, but I am doing, I mean, I'm giving an accurate representation of it because it's my representation of CF.
yeah,
But
absolutely.
there's always that bit in my head. I'm like, I worry that people will see me and not give it the, not respect, but they'll not see the severity of it because they will see me and go, well, clearly it's fine. I'm like, no, I've shaped my entire life to
Yeah,
stay healthy. I stopped a career in a career that I thought was mine, health film industry. I wanted to be a director. I stopped that so I could prioritize my health. I've centered everything around being as healthy as I can because I don't get any other option really. But my
yeah,
concern is that people will look at me and go, "That can be that serious," when it is. CF is killing people every single year, and hopefully the girl that you saw is still about. But being on oxygen, that's a tough place to be because at that point her lung functions must be so low that she is not able to breathe in enough oxygen because her lungs are damaged that much. But yeah,
yeah,
that's always a it's always in the back of my mind is like, how am I representing this thing and am I doing it in the best way possible? And I've had people kind of scold me for not representing it in a serious way or whatever they deem as a serious way, which again is, that's a them problem, and it's not really an issue.
yeah,
But I can only speak to my experiences, similar to everyone else can. I can only say what my, you know, my treatment of it, my process, my everything is unique to me. This is not. I'm never telling anyone to do something. You always make sure that you're doing what you think is right for you, and if you're going to do anything, including this is about medication and stuff, just speak to your doctors before you do anything. Please don't look at what someone else does on social media and go, "Cool, bet I'm going to do that." Don't do that. Like, make sure you're checking the people who actually know what they're talking about before you listen to someone on the internet. So,
yeah. 100%, mate.
anyway,
Yeah, and I think it's always hard because you never know what viewpoint people are
it,
listening to you or watching you from.
yeah,
So I think no matter what you say, there's always going to be someone who has a negative opinion of that because of where they're stood at that point.
yeah. I've heard it
So
on
yeah,
that too as well. Like I posted my lung functions from last week, and the video is just me. You clearly see the relief in my face, my entire body. The relief whenever I found out the percentage I got, and some people are in the comments being like, "Bad form, should be standing up, don't drop your chin." Like none of it like being positive. It's all just like, "You did this wrong, you did this wrong, you did this wrong." I was like, well, actually, I'm not allowed to stand up because I used to do that as a kid, but then they realized I'm an 80 kilo plus man. If I fall and faint, do you think a physio is going to be able to pick me up? Probably not.
yeah,
And why would they even risk that? Sitting down makes more sense. Like, you're right. Like, people will always bring their baggage to a situation. And I've just, you've just got to grow up with a bit of thick skin, being like, that's them coming from a position of hurt, not, I didn't hurt
yeah,
them. They're hurting and they're just lashing out at something that they feel like can take it. And I'm like, cool, I understand that. But yeah, it sucks. It's something as you said, you're never quite sure how you're going to come across. You know your intentions, but your actions and your intentions are usually like a bit of a bridge there, an invisible bridge that every step on, but
yeah,
other people might not. Uh,
yeah.
but yeah, so
100%.
that's interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah. But let's, the next two episodes, we're going to be talking a little bit more about our individual backgrounds and our sort of
Yes.
journey with training and coaching. So we'll go into this stuff a little more then. But
Mhm.
we've been nattering on for just over an hour now, so we should probably end this episode and just say thank you guys if you've made it this far and for supporting the podcast so far. We really appreciate all of the people who are listening, who are giving us a rating and sharing it with their friends. And please do get involved in the Would You Rathers in the comment section on the Instagram page, because it's just a bit of fun, isn't it?
It is. It is. I'll get a better one for next time. The pocket-sized elephant one is. Although I did get to talk about sad, depressing elephant. Wow, this episode's been a bit of a depressing one.
Just
I don't
stop,
know.
stop, stop. We'll see you next time. We'll see you next time.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.